Where do you find the time? People ask me this all the time, friends, colleagues, sometimes complete strangers who've stumbled across one thing I've done and then found another, and another, and another. How do you do all of this at the same time? And I understand the question. I do, because on paper it probably looks impossible, or eccentric, or, and I've heard this one, like I'm making it up. So let me try to answer it properly. Not with false modesty, and not with chest beating either, just honestly. I grew up in Naples, working class family, warm, loving, proud, but not wealthy. University was not a given, it was not the plan. The plan was finish school, find work, contribute, and that's what I did. At 18, I was already working as an accountant at a company in Naples. Before that, summers, I was working summers from the time I was old enough to be useful. You learn things that way that no lecture hall can teach you. You learn that time is the only currency that truly runs out. You learn that quickly. What I did have, and I say this without any pride of ownership, because you don't choose it, was curiosity. Pathological, insatiable curiosity. The kind that doesn't let you sit still when there's something you don't yet understand. The first language I decided to learn was Portuguese. Not English, not French, Portuguese. Because I'd heard it and something in the sound of it caught me. Then French, then English. Then 5 more after that. Not because I had a plan, because languages were doors, and I couldn't look at a closed door without wanting to know what was on the other side. I've been writing poems since I can remember. I have over 1,000 of them sitting in files and notebooks, most of them finding their way now into compositions, into arrangements, into something that sounds like a song. I played saxophone for years. I've sung at piano bars. I hosted a radio program from the age of 15, 4 years behind a microphone before I was 20. I've run bed and breakfasts. I've run cafes. I've been in banking and finance for close to 4 decades, institutional FX, treasury, transformation programs at some of the largest organizations in the world. And I write. I have published books more than most people know about, and sitting in my personal library is roughly double that number again, unpublished, waiting, not abandoned, just waiting. So, where does the time come from? Here is the honest answer. I read fast. I write fast. 5 to 10,000 words a day is not unusual for me. I developed a method for structuring long-form work that I called the architect method, and it compressed what used to take weeks into something far more efficient. And I sleep. I actually sleep. I'm not the person who martyrs themselves on the altar of the 4-hour night and calls it hustle. But none of that is really the answer. The answer is simpler and harder to explain at the same time. I read roughly 100 books a year, on top of my own work, on top of books sent to me for review or endorsement, not just literature. Finance, physics, quantum mechanics, history, political theory, geography, IT. Whatever I cannot yet grasp becomes, almost automatically, the next thing I want to understand. That's not discipline, that's appetite. And everything, I know, I taught myself. I have no academic credentials, no degree, no institutional imprimatur. Everything came from reading, from doing, from making mistakes in real situations with real consequences, and from refusing to accept that there was a category of knowledge I wasn't permitted to enter because I hadn't sat in the right room at the right age. I think that matters. Not as a boast, I'm genuinely not boasting. The self-taught person has no map, which means they also have no walls. When you've never been told that certain fields belong to other kinds of people, you don't internalize those limits. You just, read the book. There's one more thing I'll say, and then I'll leave you to draw your own conclusions. The brain I was given, and again, this is not something I claim credit for, does not work in entirely standard ways. I've suspected it for a long time. The restlessness, the parallel processing, the way ideas arrive not one at a time but in clusters, the way boredom functions less like comfort and more like a mild physical pain. I'm not diagnosing myself, but I will say this. If you find someone who seems to do too much, who moves between disciplines with what looks like suspicious ease, who can't seem to settle, don't assume they're performing. Some people are just wired closer to the edge of what a day can hold. Life is short, the day is short. I've known this since I was a teenager, counting summers between school terms and part-time work. Where do I find the time? I don't find it. I don't waste it. That was Between the Covers and Beyond, perhaps the most unusual episode you will ever listen. I'll see you in the next one.